to Mindset Michele TV show. We're so super excited for you to be joining us for yet another amazing and incredible expert coming on the show today. And today's extra special guest is the wonderful Paul Schmidt. Hello, Paul.
Hey, Michelle. How are you doing? Lovely to be here. Appreciate your time and the opportunity to talk on your show.
It's so fabulous having Paul here. He's kind of a friend, which is always one of those wonderful things and opportunities to expand my knowledge and share with you some other interesting insights from people that have generously shared their time like Paul. So Paul, for those that don't know him, is the director of Data Play. He's also the CTO of eBet and Cherry Hub. He has an interesting background, having studied accounting and Japanese, and he's also got some interesting hobbies. But rather than me spoil it all by telling you all of the interesting elements, Paul, please share with everybody, how did you come from Japanese and accounting and all the other interesting things that you do to be working in what many might think of as, a fairly dry area as CTO with data and business intelligence? What was your journey like to go from where you were to what you're doing now?
Thanks, Michelle. And it is quite diverse. I mean, I did start, I suppose, back in the day with my degrees around accounting and major in Japanese, and I've always had a fascination with Japanese and the Asian culture in general. So I suppose my journey really started back in year 9. So I was studying Japanese at high school and really enjoyed the cultural aspect to that as well as the language. So I thought coming into university, as everyone does, you don't really have much of an idea of what you want to do. So you tend to gravitate to things that interest you. And for me, that was Japanese. So I decided to do a major in Japanese, obviously a degree in Asian studies. But I thought it's important also to think about more broadly what you want to do in your career. So one of the things I thought about was business was important. So if I wanted to move into, working for an organization, I think having a business mindset was quite important. So I decided to also do a Bachelor of Commerce major in accounting. So those two combined was quite interesting. And in my journey, I did have an opportunity to live in Japan for a little bit. So that gave me an opportunity to broaden my skills around learning that language as well as immersing myself in the culture. And then I suppose from there coming back, it was really making a decision in which way you wanted to go. So I had a couple of opportunities coming out of university, and one was to work for a big bank and move into the finance area and start to hone my skills around business and accounting. The other was to move into stockbroking, which was funnily enough a different path completely. So I suppose I made the decision to really focus on my business and focus on accounting. So I moved into a bank and worked really within the finance department for a good few years, just to understand how business operates, understand the financial aspect of the business, and really give me more grounded in terms of how things operate. And especially, I suppose it's important to have those groundings in business, especially if you want to start working your own. If you want to build your own business, or if you want to move down that path of, being an entrepreneur, you really have to have those skills. So that enabled me to get to a point, and I actually started working around budgeting, planning, and forecasting, and I found that quite fascinating in terms of how do you manage a business ongoing? How do you forecast for your revenues and also for your expenses, and then monthly, quarterly, how you manage that? So back in the day when I was working in that type of industry, it was quite I suppose limited in terms of the technology. So it was either in Excel, or it may have been with products that were emerging. And I always had a fascination with technology. Having done a little bit of technology in my accounting degree, I was always fascinated with technology. So I made a decision to move from the bank into a software vendor. So this software vendor offered products around budgeting, planning, and forecasting. So I was actually a consultant and an expert in software, and also applying that to businesses around their budgeting, planning, and forecasting processes. And it sort of evolved from there. So that first step then enabled me to, meet people of like mind, and through that actually start my own business with someone who I met in this organization. So really for the next 3 to 5 years, we built up an organization around being a reseller of this product. We actually built it to about 50 people, and then we eventually sold that business. And I think having that foundation, having that understanding of business and finance really helped me grow that business and understand, how we needed to move forward. So having done that, I then ventured out into, the data space. So having worked with finance, having worked with the software, having worked in budgeting and planning, everything is revolved around data. So I moved into the data, looking at data platforms, looking at how you utilize data more effectively around the intelligence and the analytics. So spent a good few years in that space, and that was a transition for me. It was moving from finance into a vendor into the data space, and spent a good few years working within my organization around implementing these data solutions across a lot of businesses, whether that was government or the private sector. So it really gave me a good understanding and grasp on how you value data within your organization. And I think that the next logical step was to say, well, once we'd done the work around analytics and data, well, we then wanted to have a look at what products could be utilized around that as well. So I moved into the product space. So teamed up with some engineers, and we looked at building products around this as well. So having had that experience within business and having had that experience with data, I could then take that to look at what are the opportunities potentially for new products in the market. So I spent a bit of time in the product space as well. And I suppose all those things combined has given me a good understanding and a good, I suppose, built up upon each other to then move into the CTO position. So I think it's really important to have that background and have that business knowledge, because I think as CTO, it's very important to understand how a business operates and in the environments, but also how you can utilize teams to implement products based on these requirements that come through. So that's been my journey really up until today. It's been quite diverse.
Wow, and I can really hear that. And thank you for explaining what seems like this. It's quite funny hearing it, because it seems like this logical, well thought out progression. But I'm sure, like, as you were going through it, it just kind of, I won't say fell into it, but it seemed like it was the logical next thing to do, even though you didn't sit there at the ripe old age of 20 or 21 when you finished uni and went, okay, I'll do this, this, and this. Moving from finance and that banking background, working then in the vendor and selling software and understanding, products and software and how businesses operate, which then worked really well for when you were working in that data space, kind of bringing it all together. And then obviously in the recent years as CTO, you definitely explained really well. And for some people listening, they might not understand that traditionally CTOs don't necessarily have that good a grasp of the business side of a business. It might sound funny, but they can be IT specialists, but not necessarily understand the business side. So I'm sure that your skills are actually in high demand because you have got that very solid grounding across business and data and IT. With such a wide and deep grasp of knowing business and knowing your journey, it's an interesting question because it's actually more of a personal question around what does success then mean to you with such a successful career, kind of turning your hand to what you feel like doing next and then making a success of it. What does success now today mean to you, Paul?
That's a really good question, Michelle. And I think in your career and your journey, success will mean a lot of different things at points in your life, and it evolves. It evolves, and the definition of that can be different. But I think for me these days, success for me is really based upon our customer success. So, historically, if I would have thought about success 15 to 20 years ago, maybe in the success of what I've done in my journey. But when you get to a point where when you've had that experience and that expertise, you then want to refocus that. And for me, success is about driving measurable outcomes for our customers. So if we can deliver products that our customers can use that help create efficiencies in their business and help derive value within their business, then that is a measure of success. So I am driven based on customer success these days, which is really important, because I think that then feeds into, you know, the vision of how you want to engineer your products, how you want to deliver your products, and obviously having that very tightly coupled with the customer and the customer voice then gives you direction, it gives you drive, it helps inform your roadmap, and it helps your teams buy into that outcome as well. So my success is really the success of our customers.
Wonderful, and I really hear that, and I hear that coming through, especially with you know, going back to your days in the banking, where it literally, and for many organisations, everything still is run off an Excel spreadsheet. So recognising in those early days back in the banks that there must be a better way of doing the technology than an Excel
100%.
spreadsheet. So I can understand, after being in this space, if you like, for this number of years, that measurable deliverables for your clients, for your customers, is very much something that you would have become more and more passionate about, as you would have seen over the years that, you know, designing and delivering good products can actually make a difference when you see an organisation go from being full of Excel spreadsheets to using automation, etc.
100%. Yeah, exactly. And it's an interesting point, because I think when you look at a product and you look at the customer need against that product, I tend to think in terms of we're trying to solve someone's job. We're trying to solve for someone's job to make it more efficient in terms of what they do within their organization. So if you can, you know, solve for someone's job, you can make things more efficient in terms of what they do within their organization, then that's a really good outcome, because you're creating value for them as well as for the business. So that's sometimes is how to think about it. How can I solve someone's job? How can I make it easy for them to work within this organization in terms of what they need to do?
Yeah, and I think that that's a key thing today, especially as we talk now about tips for success and for creating that mindset for success. I think that given that a number of people are now under a lot more stress and feeling a lot more stressed in their role, and they may still be sitting there using a lot of Excel spreadsheets, waiting for AI or some kind of automation to come and save them from some of that more you know, tasks and activities that can be automated. But what do you think, given that you've had success in so many different areas, what are some of the suggestions and tips that you want to share for creating that mindset success?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting thing, because people will think about things differently in terms of how they see and measure success. I think one thing that stops people from being successful in terms of what they want to do around their outcomes is hesitation. I think there is a tendency to sometimes overthink in terms of the task at hand, as opposed to just trying something. And I'm of the philosophy of do many things, try many things, because it's more often than not, the first thing will not be the right way to do it. And you need to learn from that. So I think you want to try a lot of things sooner rather than later. Don't wait for having full requirements at hand, because everything changes. Everything is always changing in terms of requirements and needs for customers. So as soon as you have formed a requirement or a delivery, then iterate through that quickly. You know, get to an endpoint where you say, is this going to work or not, or do we need to continually iterate? And that really moves into that agile methodology and philosophy. What we tend to find is a lot of organizations say agile. However, when you really look underneath the hood and the covers, it's still a waterfall approach. So I think moving to this mindset of not getting caught up too much on the requirement and just trying something and iterating through it is really important, because you will not get to the right outcome straight away. This is through multiple iterations. So even though we define success, you need those learnings in order to get there. So not everything you do will be successful, but everything you do will be a learning to get you to the outcome needed.
And isn't it interesting how what you're describing in terms of the trying and the iterating and you know, the pseudo agile that we both see, I'm sure, in organizations very often, that comes back to that individual mindset as well of you know, giving something a go. When you were sharing with me before about some of the external activities you were doing, I was thinking, yeah, you know, it's about giving something a go. I love sharing the example of when I went and did aerial yoga, which was very, very painful when I went and did it. But it was an 8-week course, and I went to each of the 8 classes and suffered through the pain of each of the 8 classes. But at the point that I was able to do downward dog in a parachute from my aerial position, you know, for me, that was nirvana. I had made it. I had graduated from the class. Didn't matter what anybody else was doing with the parachutes. But I gave it a go. And I think that, you know, that for me, when I talk to people, it's explaining about building the different neural pathways that happen when you do things. And it's not about comparing yourself with somebody else, or like with your agile team in a workplace, not comparing yourself with another agile team, but how are you and your team going? And are you learning? Are you failing and learning, so that you keep moving incrementally towards success? And in my case, towards working out that normal yoga was okay and aerial yoga wasn't for me.
Exactly. No, that's, and I've, as I mentioned, I've had a few experiences around doing other things as well. And I think, and I will touch on that, but I think just before I do, there's a really important thing that you've just raised. It's giving your teams the opportunity or permission to try things. And I think it's okay for, you know, to give them an opportunity to try things and push through things and really get uncomfortable. You know, that's the thing. We often sit back and we don't let our team members push boundaries or give them permission to go and try different things. So I think it's really important to, if you are in a team, it is highly collaborative. You need to ensure that you empower your team members to take ownership of what they need to do. And that's really important. But I think also, just going back in terms of what you've said, you sometimes can be uncomfortable, like to push yourself to your limit, to push yourself to drive to that outcome. You will find yourself being very uncomfortable, you know, and that's just the nature of what we do within our jobs. And I think, you know, what I've done to help myself be more comfortable with being uncomfortable is to try different things outside of work. So, you know, for me, well-being and fitness is really important for me, and I've taken that on board, you know, for the last 20 years, and I made a deliberate choice to do that because I felt if I was being fit and healthy, then I could be a good mentor for my children. So that was deliberate. I made a choice to do that. But I think in pushing myself, I was very uncomfortable. I had to really push myself to train, to get to classes and do all the things you do to try and build your fitness. But I think it helped me create that mindset. It helped me create that mindset of being uncomfortable and being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think if you can adopt that, it then will flow into your work environment, and it creates that discipline around that as well. So, you know, outside of what I do within eBet, I also am now a personal trainer at my gym. So I give classes at my gym, and I instruct people, and I help them, you know, move towards their fitness goals, as I did, you know, for the last 20 years. And I think around doing all this thing, that's my passion as well. It's making sure that people can achieve what they need to achieve, given goals and purpose. And so I take what I do within my role within eBet, and I also apply that within the gym that I train at as well. And for me, that is, you know, that for me is a motivation for me. I really enjoy doing it. I'm very passionate about doing that as well.
And I can really hear that passion coming through, and I love. Thank you for sharing.
That's right.
I love that. I keep imagining you in the gym now, and motivating people. But what I want to really pick up on was, I love how you so beautifully again have really clearly shown that the same kinds of habits and patterns and focus that you use the word, you deliberately chose because of your children, because of this, because of that, but you deliberately chose that you were going to be uncomfortable, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that has now resulted in this being a personal trainer in your gym and helping people go on the journey that you've been on. I'm sure you have been the role model for your children as they were growing up and seeing you in, I imagine quite stressful roles and jobs at certain times, but then going out and still like you said, making the time to go and train, to go in this, to go in that. And that overall finding for you what was your focus on wellness and health. So finding that early on and going, well, this is my pattern interrupt, if you like, because people in work, you can get caught up and just be working, especially when it's quite stressful and difficult times like we have at the moment. You can just kind of be on this one railroad track. And so it's great to hear your suggestion about, well, recognize that you're doing that and then get comfortable with being uncomfortable of, oh, okay, I might not do as great a job on that deadline for tomorrow because I'm going to this class or I'm doing this or I'm doing that. So be comfortable with that, because that other choice, that overall wellness and health or whatever it might be for someone, is actually really important for the longer goal of being that more rounded person. And that I love it. Now you're an actual trainer in the gym.
Well, it's interesting because I've also brought that philosophy into EBET as well. So, we have done boot camps at EBET. So I'll encourage the staff to come and participate and do boot camps. And it's about making or helping people realize that there are other things outside of work to help you grow and help develop your mindset, because a lot of, as you mentioned, Michele, a lot of people get too tunneled vision in their work environment. So they've got to step out of it. And they've really got to embrace doing different things, and maybe not just fitness. I think it's important to have a hobby. I think it's important to do things outside of what you would normally do within your workplace. But what that does, it brings that back into your workplace as well. So that's the other thing. It helps bring back good habits, a good well-being, mental stability back into your workplace as well. It's really important to have that across the board and not just have that tunnel vision within work all the time.
And I agree. And I think given that these types of habits, I'm kind of joking now about how you're a trainer at the gym, but you did actually point out it's been a 20-year journey. It's not like something that you went, oh, okay, I'm going to implement these great habits. I'm not going to be tunnel vision anymore. I'm going to go off and join a gym and be a trainer. It's a journey. And so what do you think has helped you? You mentioned your children, but what else do you think has helped you to keep, in those difficult times, keep focused on your new habits that you want to create and keep going down your other hobbies, like the other things that you mentioned earlier, to keep those as just as an important part, knowing that your overall mental well-being, your overall success was really important about pulling out of that mindset of I've got to do this, and stepping back and going, well, I need to do more of other things for the overall success of what I'm doing here. What did you do?
I think I just in my mind, I continually said to myself, this is important. You need to do this. And even when there were days where you don't feel like doing it, I think you have to stop those thoughts coming in. I mean, they're going to come in regardless, but I think if you can just, for instance, if I'm having to get up at 4:30 in the morning to go to the gym, that's a decision and choice you make, but you don't think about it. Just stop thinking about it. Just get up, make it a habit. And that's key. You got to make these things a habit. So as I continually did it, and there were some days that were harder than others, I would just make sure that it's a habit, knowing that what I do now will give me benefit later. And so what I do now will give me benefit later, even if I did not feel like doing it, because I knew that if we talk about mental health and the rise of mental health issues, especially with the stresses that we have with our work environment, that helps. So knowing that doing something, regardless whether it's training or getting up and going for a walk or going out and grabbing a coffee with friends, those aspects of doing those things for our own mental health help us in the workplace. And that's what drove me. I thought I need to keep doing this. It becomes a habit over time. So you tend not to think about it as much. So because it is part of you, it's ingrained with you, it becomes a habit. And that's really important, is to develop those habits. And that's what I did. I just, even when it was hard, I'd try not to think about it, and I'd just get up and I would just go to the gym. And that now is my habit. So I don't find it as hard. I mean, it's a lifestyle choice, but I do realize now in doing that, it helps me in a lot of other aspects of my life, not just my work as well.
And I really hear about the idea that it's a habit. And I know some people may be thinking, oh, it's one I've tried, but, I just can't make the habit stick. But I always say to people that, brushing your teeth, driving a car, these are things that, because they've become an automated habit, you're actually not even thinking of anymore.
Right.
And it is getting exercise or whatever you choose as that hobby to create that mindset to success and health and well-being. It's whatever you choose, making it so much of a habit that you're not thinking about it. I always remember I lived in the UK for a while, and I won't mention the name of the company, but they had 2 offices, and the other office had a gym in it. And every day I used to get on the bus, the minibus went between the offices, get on the bus to go to the gym, and I'd spend most of the time on the way there bitching and going over in my head about how much I didn't want to do it and how much of a pain in the ass it was and this and that and whatever else. And then all of the way on back on the bus taking me back to the original office, going, oh, this is wonderful, this is great, this is fabulous. And I used to laugh because I could see myself doing it as this insanity, I called it at the time, this insane pattern. But it became a habit. I would finish work, walk downstairs, got on the bus. So exactly like you were saying, even when I still had all of that negativity going, I just kind of went, yeah, I heard the same record yesterday.
Yeah.
And it started to, I could see how over the days I started to ignore it, because it was just like, oh, yeah, I hear you, but I'm just to ignore you because I'm going to do this pattern and do this pattern and do this pattern. And that's how they become habits, yes.
Exactly. And I think having done Asian studies, so obviously I studied Asian studies, and part of that is you do a semester of mysticism. So you study Asian religions. So I did get, I was quite interested in that, and particularly Buddhism. So it's a way of life, right? It's a way. They don't necessarily call it a religion; they call it a way of life. So part of that, if we talk about thoughts, is recognizing for what they are. They're just thoughts. So you can choose to let it in or not, and that's up to you. So around all this is recognizing that, as you mentioned, Michele, say negative or positive thoughts or just thoughts. And so if you look at it from that perspective, say, it's just a thought. It's telling me not to go to the gym, but I can recognize that as just a thought. So it doesn't matter what it is. I'm still going to go. I'm going to get up and I'm going to go. So I'm not even thinking about it. I'm not even letting these thoughts come into my mind. I'm just recognizing it for what it is and letting it go and just going off and getting to the gym. So that's something I've learned as well over time, and you can bring this into your workplace as well. We've seen situations where it gets very stressful. People react. It can be quite, it can be quite hostile sometimes in work environments. But I think that having that philosophy and recognition of thoughts, regardless if you're going to the gym or in work, it does help in terms of those types of environments as well. And what you find is that the way that you interact with people and work with people and motivate people changes as well, because you're not reacting. You're not reacting to anything anymore in your workplace. So I do try and adopt that as well.
And so much wonderful, wonderful suggestions and tips today, Paul. But we're coming to a close of the show. So what's the best way for people to get hold of you?
Certainly. I am on LinkedIn, so if they want to find me on LinkedIn and connect with me and send a message, I'm also happy for them to send me an email directly. So it's paul.schmidt@ebetsystems.com.au.
Fabulous. And Paul, very quickly then, if you were to give some advice to your younger self, what might that advice be?
That's a very, very good question. You know, the power of hindsight. I think the advice I would give to myself these days is to go out and try things. Don't hesitate. You know, it's so important these days to try multiple things, and that's what I would have done. I would have explored. I actually would have travelled a bit as well, to be honest, Michelle. I would have travelled a lot more back then, just to experience the world and really narrow my focus in terms of where I would see myself going. But I think it's just about just going out and trying things and not being afraid to fail. You know, don't be afraid to fail. Just try things and try things with passion and motivation, and that will be your drive. That's what I would have said to myself. Don't hesitate.
I love that. What a wonderful battle cry for the end of the chat today. Don't hesitate. Just go out and try things. And that's there was some real insights there when Nike came up with the Just Do It.
Yeah.
That whole campaign about just living life and being in the moment. Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate it.
And for all of the viewers, we're very, very honoured to have experts like Paul come on and share their incredible journey through life and also their amazing insights into how to create that successful mindset. But for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.